Okay, this is going to be a long one, but I get a lot of comments and messages about how my content is appreciated because I talk about the brain and I explain the neuroscience behind addiction. But then people come in and they're also surprised that I will not immediately dismiss the 12-step programs. And in fact, at times I will recommend it in conjunction with other peer facilitated groups. I don't dismiss it outright, and they have a real problem with that. And so I want to talk about this phenomenon. So, this idea that keeps coming up is that AA or 12-step programming is pseudoscience. It's harmful. It only helps some mythical number that gets passed down to generations of like 5%. Somehow it shouldn't even be recommended anymore. And I think part of why this argument never really goes anywhere is because people are actually having different conversations and pretending they're the same one. A lot of critiques of AA are based on personal experience. So it hurt me, it didn't help me, I had a bad sponsor. All of that is real and valid, and it does matter, but then those experiences get used to make global claims. So that AA as a model is harmful or ineffective or shouldn't exist. And that's a different level of argument. Personal experience and population level claims don't play by the same rules. And here's another piece that doesn't get talked about enough, right? Why are people so reactive to AA in the first place or 12-step programming? For a lot of people, it's not the mechanism, it's the language. So words like powerless or God hit identity level nerves, and especially if self-reliance is how you survived. But neurologically, surrender in addiction isn't giving up agency. It's actually offloading control while the prefrontal cortex recovers. You don't have to like the language to understand the mechanism. And when you strip the actual steps down, they're not mystical. Structure and repetition build habits. Inventory re-engages the frontal cortex. Amends reduces shame. Service recalibrates reward. Connection regulates dopamine. So you can dislike the framing, but still acknowledge the biology. Now, I'm going to try and say this clearly. There are bad treatment centers. Some pop up overnight, they ignore evidence-based care, and they hide behind ideology. That's real. But AA is not a treatment model. Legitimate treatment centers don't treat addiction with 12 steps. They provide medical care, therapy, meds when appropriate, and they encourage peer facilitated recovery engagement, whatever that looks like, all of the things that looks like. But in a lot of communities, especially small towns, 12-step meetings are simply the most available form of that peer support. It's not collusion or some fucking conspiracy that AA bought treatment centers. That's just geography. And here's an epiphany that actually tied this together for me. For decades, AA and NA were basically the only recovery options available. There was no addiction medicine, no MAT, no real outpatient therapy. There was no alternatives. So what people in AA saw was this. People who stayed connected and in the program often lived, and people who left often died. Not because AA could save everyone, but because at the time, the alternative was nothing, and nothing is deadly. That's where the whole if you leave, you'll die messaging comes from. It wasn't ideology, it was pattern recognition in a world with no other lifelines. The problem is, the field of addiction medicine has evolved fairly quickly, but the parts of the culture didn't update the explanation. So the fear got passed down from sponsor to sponsee, generation to generation, without the context that now we actually have other options. So today we end up with two things happening at once. Some people reacting against outdated fear-based messaging, and others defending the only thing that ever worked in a very different era. And that's why this debate stays so emotionally charged. You don't have to go to AA. You don't have to like AA. But moving from this didn't work for me to this is inherently harmful and shouldn't be offered, that's not a preference anymore. That's a population level claim. And population level claims deserve nuance, context, evidence, history, not just internet talking points that get passed around the same way the fear mongering did in the 12-step program. AA is not treatment. It is one form of community. And community mattered when nothing else existed. It still fucking matters now, even though it's no longer the only option. I hope that was helpful.